Welcome to the Hockey Writers Maple Leafs Lounge, a weekly show from our Toronto Maple Leafs writing crew, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, prospects, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from draft day to the trade deadline, our team covers everything that happens with the blue and white. Come on in and pull up a chair. Welcome to the Maple Leafs Lounge.
Hey, everybody. Welcome inside the Maple Leafs Lounge. I'm your host, Kevin Armstrong, joined as always by my friends and colleagues, Peter Baracchini and Alex Hobson. And before we go anywhere, it is January 9th. Happy birthday, Jack Campbell. I've given myself good karma all year because that's the nicest man in the world. Unfortunately, he was left out to dry a little bit last night against Colorado. Unbelievable game. I really enjoyed the game. From a fan perspective, watching that game was amazing. It was great to see Toronto go against such a high caliber team in Colorado. If you listen to Keefe after, he talked about the waves that were coming at them, and they were beat by the third period, and you saw it. Campbell kept them in as long as he could, but Colorado proved why they are still a Stanley Cup favorite. And Toronto still has a little bit of work to do. So let's start with reaction from that game. Let's go with you, Alex.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people, if you were on social media after the game, were a little upset because the Leafs blew yet another 4-1 lead. And, there's always the jokes. It was 4-1, et cetera. Having said that, last night didn't feel like a 4-1 choke to me because I feel like a lot of those games, the Leafs were the dominant team throughout the first little bit, and then they take their foot off the gas, and that's where the choke comes into play. Last night, I think the Leafs really just benefited off of Darcy Kemper's shaky start. I don't think they were in control of that game at all throughout the game. I think, like I said, they benefited from Colorado's goalie starting shaky, and they did get some goals early on, but Colorado had the pedal to the metal throughout the entire game. So to me, it didn't really feel like that much of a choke. I thought Campbell was amazing despite what his stats might say. And I feel like if the Leafs had gone in and not scored the goals they did early on and lost maybe 6-2 or something like that, oddly enough, I feel like people wouldn't be as upset because it's not attached to that stupid 4-1 narrative. So overall, obviously not a game that the Leafs want to look back on fondly, but it was very exciting. And as of right now, I believe they're 24-2 in their last 26 games. So it's kind of hard to be upset about anything.
Yeah. And it's nice to see them get challenged like that. Wins are wins. We like all the wins, but we haven't seen this team challenged in that way in a little while. So, and I guess the fourth line and the third line started to get way less ice time as well, that you started to see show up in the third period, because if you're Sheldon Keefe, how do you put out a Kyle Clifford against Nathan MacKinnon? So that was kind of showing up. Peter, your thoughts?
Yeah. Really, again, I'm disappointed in the loss, but the fact that they managed to get 1 point out of it is a good sign, considering that they had a 4-1 lead. Not the result, but hey, a point's a point. To what Alex said, you can't be too disappointed with the result, given their record in the past and the way that they played. Being challenged by a Stanley Cup contending team regardless. I mean, they had a full roster this time, and you know what? When Colorado was putting on the pressure, there were times that Toronto answered back and answered with a little bit of a momentum swing of their own. So there was that. But when the third period hit, where they only mustered like 2 shots in the first 10 minutes before Gabriel Landeskog made it 4-3, you knew that the tide was swinging already. With the momentum that Colorado had in the first 2 minutes of that period, you knew something was going to happen, and then Toronto just looked out of it. And even Keith said that they just looked gassed. And playing in the Mile High City of Colorado, it does take a hold on you, and maybe everything just caught up to them. So average 40 minutes could have been a better third period to shut it down, but again, can't be too disappointed with where they are at right now, given the fact that they were also down Marner and Engvall to COVID. Kasha's out. Positives to take, but just don't focus too much on one loss at this point.
This is the Maple Leafs Lounge, brought to you by the Hockey Writers. Make sure you follow us on all your favorite social media channels. So COVID continues to hit this team. The latest to go down, Mitch Marner and Pierre Engvall. And stepping up into the first line was Alex Kerfoot against Colorado, and he looked right at home. He's really shown a lot. I'd say even since the last playoffs, when he was right there with Nylander as the best Leaf in that playoff series, but he's looked really good everywhere he's played this season, and I thought he looked great beside Matthews. So Kerfoot, his value just keeps going up. Where do you see that going, and what does that kind of give for opportunities for the Leafs, Peter?
Yeah, I mean, you just mentioned his versatility, how he could play anywhere in the lineup, center, wing. And, I've always, even like in the past few years, I've critiqued his play, how it wasn't like up to standards when he was in that third line role, but he consistently got better and improved his play every single year. And the only down factor is with the Maple Leafs right now is if you need to sign Jack Campbell, which he's going to need a new contract, you're going to have to move a contract out. And it's tough to move someone like Kerfoot, given his impact on his team in the top six on the penalty kill. And even right now, the fact that he was able to keep up and produce with Austin Matthews in one game where he has 3 points. I mean, again, you just mentioned his value just continues to skyrocket, and that game just proved it. Difficult situation, because I would love to keep Kerfoot on no matter what, but $3.5 million is just too high, and they have a decision to make if they want to keep him or move him, because he's a critical piece going forward no matter what. It's just that money value, it's lingering over their heads at this point.
I will say we've got to go back to where this all began, and that was a trade of Nazem Kadri. Kadri's on a pace of 127 points this season. Ha! So anyway, Alex, what are your thoughts on how Kerfoot's playing?
Well, I mean, obviously the writing's on the wall. He's having a career year right now. And I think over the past couple of weeks, I'd say he just continues to impress me more and more. And, I was already impressed with him in last year's playoffs. Like you said, he kind of developed a bit of a pest edge to his game, and also was one of their most consistent forwards, not named William Nylander. And, it was a bit of a rocky summer for him because his name was sort of bouncing in and out of expansion draft rumors, but he stuck around, and he's proving that he can be that versatile player for them. Granted, obviously his contract is going to be a talking point as the season wraps up, because if I'm not mistaken, I believe he's got one more year on his deal after this year. So that will be something to talk about in the off season. They might need to move that money to feed other needs such as Jack Campbell, which I'm sure we'll touch on later on eventually. But overall, 8 points in his last 3 games for Kerfoot. He's got 24 and 33 on the season now, on pace for, I believe, 59 points. So he has potential to be a really important piece for them down the stretch this year.
All right. It was a tough week for Nick Ritchie. Put on waivers and went through waivers untouched. So that's all 32 teams are saying, we don't like you. You're not worth that contract. That's got to be tough for anybody to take. And then because of COVID and Marner and Engvall going down, they're like, hey, just kidding. You're still on the team. We need you to play. He goes out and gets a goal, but I would say I expected a lot more. He took a late penalty. I wanted to see a bowling ball type player out there when that's happened, but this has been really tough for Nick Ritchie. So what do you do with Nick Ritchie at this point, Alex?
Well, I think, and obviously you kind of touched on it there, Kevin, 32 teams had the chance to take him for free and nobody did. So as of right now, I think the fact that he's got that extra year on his deal sort of kills any trade value that he might have, unless you're using him as a throw-in for a team that has a lot of cap space. So I think as of right now, the Leafs just got to look for the best case scenario with Ritchie. I mean, whether he's on the taxi squad, because that's a thing now, or whether they give him some time maybe to get his confidence back in the AHL or anything like that. Overall, I think the Leafs just got to hold on to him and just recognize that depth is depth. And, as you get closer to the playoffs, I think if he develops, well, I won't say develops because he's shown that he has it, but if he starts to utilize his physical edge a little bit more, I think there might be a spot for him on the team as they move into the playoffs. You saw last night, he got into it with a couple of Avalanche players. He took on like 3 at once, and he did take a stupid penalty at the end the game, which I don't think anyone's disputing, but we've seen how important depth is towards the playoffs. I don't think you're going to get anything for Nick Ritchie in a trade. So at this point, they might as well just try and keep him fresh and use him as one of those pieces to call up once the salary cap doesn't matter anymore.
Peter, anything to add to that?
Yeah, for me, it's just a consistency aspect. Too many times this year. I mean, we can look at the production and how well he's played recently, but it's just not there. And he scored a key goal, boneheaded play with the penalty at the end of the game, and that's the main sticking point. Obviously, Keith said it's about cap constraints and the way that the salary cap is right now, but for me, it is his play. Given how there are times where he's had multiple instances where they were throwing him out there to try and make an impact, and then he does something that, cost the team. Granted, it didn't lead to a goal, but it killed any momentum that they were having at 5-on-5 and gave Colorado more of an advantage 5-on-4. To me, he needs to pick his spots better in order to know when to make a play but not take a penalty. That's his biggest issue for me, because it's hurt the team in the past. It hurt them yesterday, and you can't have that on your team right now. And that just makes players like Kyle Clifford someone that you could use more, because he's going to step up when he needs to and not do anything that'll jeopardize the team right now. It's tough. We all hope for the best for him, but it just really isn't there.
Make sure you go to thehockeywriters.com and click under the Maple Leafs tab to find all the stories by us and other writers, as well as information to find us on your favorite podcast network and over on the Discord app as well. We have been fans of Matthew Knies since he was drafted. I think we can all agree on that. We thought it was a great draft pick, and that is showing up. I told you guys when I got to watch him play in person here in Edmonton for the tune-up for the World Juniors, he looked great to me. Big body out there, has a lot of control about the puck. Great. Everything about his game I thought was really good. I really, really was impressed by him. And now we're seeing by the likes of John Morosi saying on Sportsnet 590, The Fan, that, quote, I think if the draft were held today with those same players available, he would be a pick between 10 and 15. He's that good. Power forward, really impressive, possessing the puck. He can make plays. So, Peter, you're the guy that watches the draft closer than anybody, and you called this one. What do you say about Matthew Knies? And do you think actually at this point, could he be going to the Olympics for the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, just outstanding play from Knies. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. He's just absolutely fantastic. 13 points in his last 10 games in the NCAA, and is already at a point per pace level or point per game level, 20 and 20 games with the University of Minnesota. This kind of production, this kind of play and consistency as a freshman is just absolutely looking great for the Maple Leafs with that pick. And there were some scouts out there that even had Knies in the second round, but even in that 35 to 45 spots, making him an early second round pick. And if the draft were to be held today, there isn't a doubt in my mind that, Matthew Knies could be into that top 15, top 20. It really is astonishing, or not astonishing. It's impressive on how he's able to do this. And then couple that with his short stint at the World Juniors, and now he's caught the attention of the U.S. Olympic team, being invited to possibly play for them. That's going to be really great, because, I mean, we were all hoping to see, Austin Matthews suit up for Team America and go up against Mitch Marner and possibly John Tavares for Team Canada. Seeing Matthew Knies suit up for Team USA, it's going to be really great for everyone to get more of an opportunity to see him when they really haven't at the NCAA level, and not so much with the World Juniors, because this kid's fantastic. His play with the puck, his play without it's just phenomenal. And yeah, it's an exciting time to be watching him at this point.
Alex, final words on Matthew Knies?
Yeah, I don't really have too much to add that Peter didn't already say, but, I think it serves as a testament that he's being considered for the Olympics as a second round pick from just this past year. He's basically, from what I've seen, he plays a lot like Zach Hyman, except he's got a better shot. And I think if you're getting a guy like if you're getting a guy like that you can slide into your top six, I think he's got potential to be a really special player. And I think the fact that John Morosi especially is saying that he'd go in between 10th and 15th overall this year. Obviously that's one man's opinion, but at the same time, if you're having conversations like that about a player like Matthew Knies, I think it says a lot about how the Leafs were able to get him in the second round. So overall, I think it's looking like a great pick so far, and I'm excited to see what he can do as he develops.
Now, we also seem to have a bit of a price tag for the young defenseman out of Arizona, Jakob Chychrun. Am I saying it right this time? Yep. Yes, Jakob Chychrun. Yes. Great young defenseman. He's got lots of term left. This would be a great pickup, but we know that Arizona is asking for a lot, which they should be. Jeff Merrick reported last night that ask is a 20-goal scorer that's young, a top prospect, and a first-round draft pick. So we were trying to think what that would be for the Maple Leafs, and it doesn't look good. And I don't think the Maple Leafs are in this running at this point. They've got great defensemen coming up through the prospect system. So we're thinking so you've got to give your first rounder. We're thinking maybe Nick Robertson, and we're thinking maybe an Alex Kerfoot, because you got to make the budget work. I'm not taking that deal. What do you guys think? Are the Leafs in on this, or is it time to walk away?
I mean, it's always great to throw your name in and consider him, because he is a solid two-way defenseman. He's got a powerful shot from the point something that the Maple Leafs lack. But the reason why they may not go after him is because he is a left-handed shot. He's not a right-handed defenseman. They want to try and find that balance. You already have two lefties on the top unit with Riley and Brody. To have another one with Chychrun and Muzzin, and one of them playing on the offside, I don't know if it's going to work out or not. But, you always have to consider, hey, is this guy going to be one that could vault us through? And Jakob Chychrun does have the potential to be that impact defenseman, to turn the tides with his defensive play, his offensive abilities, and his shot. So I mean, we gave a potential starting projection for a deal. I don't know if Kyle Dubas is actually going to do it, but it's still something to still consider, because hey, a defenseman like that at that price hit for 3 more years, obviously Kyle Dubas with his ability to, or Brandon Pridham as well, to try and manage everything under the cap, they're going to try and look at it no matter what.
Alex, I'm thinking you're not taking this deal because I know you're really high on the Finnish prospects that are coming up on the blue line. Yeah,
I mean, Peter touched on it as well. I think the fact that Chychrun's a left-handed defenseman and not a right-handed defenseman makes this deal a little bit dicier for the Leafs to complete. I think Timothy Liljegren still has promise on the right side coming up, and I think obviously you've got Topi Niemelä out there, and who's really sort of emerged himself as a top prospect in this organization. So obviously, if you're getting a cost-controlled defenseman, young defenseman, I should say, like Jakob Chychrun, that, like Peter said, that's something you definitely want to look at. But at the same time, that almost strikes me as a move that the Maple Leafs would only make for the purpose of making a big move. I think obviously you look at Chychrun as well. He's great offensively, but I'm not sure if he's really got the defensive game that the Leafs would be looking for. And again, he plays the left side, not the right side. So it's tough to say. And now, you know what, obviously if the Leafs went out and they made this trade and they acquired Jakob Chychrun, I'm sure the fan base would love it. I'd probably find a silver lining in it as well. I think you're adding a big name player to the roster, but as we're sitting here right now discussing what the return would be, I don't know if it's a move that the Leafs would be worth making.
I think I'd want, to be honest, guys, for that kind of price tag, I think I'd want somebody a little bit more veteran, a little bit more grizzly, because he'd be a great regular season player. I don't know what he'd play like in the playoffs, and that's all that I care about at this point. I'm sorry. That's where I'm at. So the Maple Leafs are on the road, and they're happy to be on the road because they're playing in front of loud buildings. Sheldon Keefe said Colorado was the loudest building they have played in this year, and you saw a lot of excitement on the ice. They said they couldn't even hear each other out there. So that's the kind of atmosphere that these hockey players love to play in. They're not doing that in Ontario right now. Empty buildings again. And the league keeps on postponing the games. New Jersey is canceled or postponed on January 17th. There's also an Anaheim game coming up in later January that could be postponed as well. That would make it up to 10 games that the Leafs have to make up for in that Olympic window. And that's if things go as planned at this point. So I threw out the idea of why don't you move the home games to Buffalo? It's a quick drive, and I'm talking about the home games. As some people said, they have families. You can't make them move to Buffalo. I'm not saying that. I'm saying play the home games in Buffalo. I even look at this past week. They left a huge opportunity on the table because the Montreal game was postponed, and Montreal played in Buffalo on Saturday night. They could easily put the Leaf game on the Friday night there. Anyway, and then you could have had all those fans, all those Montreal fans come in. It would have been a great time. And the league would have got the revenue from the tickets, which is, we know it's all about. So anyway, that's my idea. And I don't know why they're not looking at these ideas a little bit closer, because you need the revenue. And I don't want this team to get run ragged trying to make up for games that are postponed just because fans can't come into the stands. So what are your guys' thoughts on that?
It's tough. I mean, we saw how it kind of worked out with the Toronto Raptors and the Toronto Blue Jays previously, how they were able to play games in the States, and that works fine because it's one Canadian team, but you also have to worry about everyone else in Canada right now if they have the means to try and go over to the States as well, kind of like Montreal, where they saw their games get canceled quite a bit. It's not going to be the same feel for me. I mean, I think it would probably just be better to play their home games in an empty arena. I mean, I get you want the fans there, but given the transmissibility of this virus and the rising hospitalizations and ICUs, I want to try and mitigate the traveling or crossing over the borders, because that may be an issue as well with crossing over there. It's really tough because this isn't a situation where we want to be in, especially the players too, given how they were thriving off the fans when they were playing before they went to Edmonton and before games got postponed. I think it's probably just going to be best to try and postpone the games and then maybe move up the games that they're supposed to play later on, bump those games up to now, and then possibly play those games after. But then again, it's going to be really difficult. And if they have those 3 weeks in February with the Olympic pause to make up for those games, I think that's going to be a saving grace. But in terms of going to the States to play games, I think it's just going to be a bit of a headache and a hassle given the restrictions of the border, the unfamiliarity of playing not actually a home game when they're playing on the logo of another team. Let's say if they're playing in the Buffalo Sabres arena when they're not playing on the same day. It can be a factor. So I think maybe it's a little bit up in the air.
Yeah, I'm going to keep the COVID part aside of this because there's lots of different ways we can look at it. We got full rinks in Colorado and we have empty rinks in Toronto. I don't understand.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a whole other topic. But, being in Edmonton, I can tell you that when Toronto was here, all those Toronto fans that go make more noise than I would say a lot of home games in Toronto. It's because it's your only chance to see them and you've traveled or whatever it could be. So I always find that the traveling fans are more rowdy and loud and they are there to support their team. So that's one reason why I see like a road game, if you're able to go and watch in a different place. That's one reason as well, that I think the fan excitement can get behind them. Alex, what are your thoughts on this one?
Honestly, like Peter said, it's really tough. And I think, after watching the Blue Jays last year start their season off in Dunedin and then move to Buffalo before they could finally get back to Toronto, and watching the Raptors having to play their home games in Tampa Bay, I'm just so over the idea of playing home games anywhere but your own barn. And, I think I'd entertain the idea if there was absolutely no chance that the Leafs would be able to have fans in the stands for the rest of the season, because I think the only thing that I'd want less than having to relocate home games is to have to watch all home games in an empty arena. So I think it's just one of those things you want to take day by day. I wouldn't mind the idea of doing that for a game here and there. If the Leafs have to play a home game and, Buffalo's got an open barn the night they would schedule that game, I don't think it would be a bad idea. But in terms of committing to something like that, I don't know. that the idea of doing that is a little bit demoralizing to me. I don't think the players would like it. I don't know. I might just be speaking out of my rear right now, but at the same time, I don't ever want to have to think about teams relocating where they play their home games while pretty much the rest of the league is living in normalcy.
Yeah. I don't know. As I said in the article too, if this is truly about fans in the stands, then how come all the Arizona games haven't been postponed for years?
It's a good question to be asked.
Yeah. Just ask it, Batman.
Never mind the season for years. Wow.
Yes, but hopefully, well, we do have 3 games this week that will be in front of fans, and hopefully we get to see some crowds like that, including Austin going to play in front of his home crowd. I'm gonna say it's probably going to be his home team at some point. Oh boy, but Arizona is coming up this week.
Playing with fire there.
I know, but that should be a fun week to watch some hockey. These games are not going to be postponed because they're all in the States. So that's a good thing, at least for Leaf fans. That is our show this week on the Maple Leafs Lounge. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to leave comments below and head on over to thehockeywriters.com and comment on our articles as well. We always like to hear that fan feedback. I'm your host, Kevin Armstrong, and that's Peter, and that is Alex, and we will see you next week.